the politics in all of this is enormous. That's why people will say identity politics, and sometimes they try to put some kind of meaning into some that will ordinarily not make any kind of meaning in all of this. But you mentioned at the start the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So let's take the federation there, the federalism issue, and see how we can tie that with the identity politics we're trying to unravel here in our constitution. Speaking about federalism, which almost everyone has been talking about, if we decided to do something different and say we're not a federated state, a federation, and we decide to go the way it is being operated now, some would say it is unitary in outlook. Do you think the way it is already, it will affect, for instance, the traditional institutions? What would then be the place of traditional institutions? What would then be the place of local government administration? Will that interfere in the process of identity politics?
No, I think, well, there is a connection between that, and I think we need to establish it. I think the first thing to note in this country is that we chose deliberately to become a federal system. And by so doing, we were responding to the dynamics of our society. That itself was an admission that this country is a country of different ethnicities, a country of different, so we have layers of identity, and we were looking for federalism as a political ideology for addressing this problem. In other words, we admitted that we were divided in terms of these identities, but that these identities can also become the building block of unity. And what we then need to do is that the Constitution has to give expression to this diversity in the real sense of the word. And that can be done in terms of how power is shared, between the federal, the state, and the local governments. You see, because at the end of the day, and my own understanding of the problem is that all the issues of identity, of indigenship, and so on, they are all tied to the failure of development in this country. They are tied to the failure of development, because it is in the context of failure of the state to deal with the everyday problem of people that people resort to identities in which they think they can have survival. So I think we need to take note of that. But more importantly,
but that's very key here.
Yeah, that is very key. So there's a whole question of development, because if you look at the history of this country, up to 1982, when the Nigerian economy ran into trouble, we didn't have any of this problem. Now, identity conflicts have risen, in the context of massive economic decline. And when the structural adjustment came and eroded the basis of livelihood, ethnic and religious identity became more and more assertive in this country. So it is first and foremost a development question. But coming back to question of structure and how power is divided, I think we can give federalism expression in terms of giving more responsibilities and more resources to the states, and also giving local government autonomy so that they can actually do development work. As they are today, they are simply instruments of control at the pleasure of governors, and it has nothing to do with the purpose of reform that we started in 1976 to make local government really a point of development in this country. We have a chance in this country to correct this.
Let's talk about one major issue, which before we talked about the remedy you did talk about before we went for the news. After independence, it's amazing that we still grapple with all of these about true federalism. One wonders how well we can appease, let's use the word now, all the different sections of our communities. When we talk about a true federal state, how can we start to do all of that appeasement for them if we can, actually?
Well, I think the one point I want to make, is that I listened to some debates. I think some people interviewed on channels, television. And they were strongly making this point that we must have a conference of ethnic nationalities in this country so that we can discuss the future of this country. Unfortunately, even though we are federal, ethnic groups are not the constituent elements of the Nigerian Federation. ethnic groups are not the constituent elements of the Nigerian Federation. The constituent units of the Nigerian Federation are states. Apart from a few of the states that are mono-ethnic, many states in this country are multi-ethnic. You have a state like Niger, Plateau, Benue, all of them are multi-ethnic. So therefore, the critical question to address is that you need a structure that gives enormous responsibilities to the states, because for me, that is the real point where development takes place.
Now, given the recommendations of a federal structure that you also seem to be canvassing for, devolution of powers from the central and empowering the states and other smaller units of the federation. But now, given the fact that people have pointed the need to have an economic bond to foster the unity of the nation, now, creating a weak center, wouldn't that lead to a further breakaway of the nation, considering the security crisis that it's even threatening already the situation of unity in the country?
I agree with you. The point I'm making is that as it is today, we require to give more responsibilities to the states and also to local governments. We need to also transfer more resources. And in so doing, we can create a balance. I'm not saying we should go for...
So how do we create a balance in this situation?
And I'm coming to that. Let's remember that a federal system is not a static thing. It is always a dynamic system. And it swings between one extreme, and the other. There was a time in this country that we had a weak center and the regions were stronger. The country ran into a problem. The civil war became inevitable. Because, as one of my teachers said, the federal tail, the regional tail was wagging the federal dog because the regions were more powerful. Then after the civil war, we said, we needed more unity. And then we had a series of decrees that then built a very powerful center. Coupled with military intervention, you therefore had a very huge federal center that was breathing down, on the states. And today, from that extreme of centralization, there's a realization that you also need to tinker with the federal arrangement. So if you learn from history, it is not to go for a weak center, but it's to create a balance. That you have a center that is strong, but still disperse power and resources in such a way, because the center is too powerful as it is today. It is a source of attraction and the Hobbesian character of politics, because everyone wants to get there. But you need a strong center, but you can actually balance it in such a way that you can give more